Welcome to Town Talk and our Town Manager Community Update. Today we're talking about wind projects and some updates and community host agreements. With me, Town Manager Mark Ells. Welcome.
Good to see you, Paula.
Good to see you as well. So, always updates. Things are never static here in the town of Barnstable. So we have 3 wind projects that are currently here in the town. And we're looking for some updates on each of those. So we have Vineyard Wind, we have Park City, and we have Commonwealth. So let's start with Vineyard Wind. Where are we in the project?
Okay, so Vineyard Wind is the cable landing and then traversing the roadways in Barnstable at Covell's Beach. It's been in the works since, I think they came to us in 2017 to, initiate discussions. And that project is permitted and under construction at this point. So if you go down to Covell's Craigville right now, you can actually see barges offshore and they're pulling cable. To be able to ultimately connect offshore off the south side of Martha's Vineyard to turbines, and then to bring it into concrete boxes that are under the pavement on Covell's Beach, and then from those boxes through conduits, utility conduits in our roadways, and up to the substation that's up along the Mid-Cape Highway in Independence Park. So that's permitted. We have a host community agreement for that project, and they are fulfilling the terms of that host community agreement, meaning everything from the various payments that are included into that, fulfilling the requirements of one of the early requirements that is held in all of our discussions has been no interconnecting to the cable they're pulling in by someone else, so that we don't want to have projects be able to land here that we haven't had the opportunity to sit down through the host community agreement process and make sure Barnstable gets from it what Barnstable wants from the project. And we've made sure that they do the work in our roadways in a way that replaces all utilities that might be impacted, that they allow for us to put in sewers where sewers are planned. That's been a big part of this. And just for everybody's information, if you've watched what's happened up Craigville Beach Road and then up Strawberry Hill Road, now on Finney's, it is a multi-stage process. So the sewer typically goes in first, it's the deepest. Right. And then on top of that, sometimes concurrent with it, we're looking at water lines. If they're old water lines, they'll have to be replaced. They lay conduit for this cable to be pulled through. Drainage needs to be done, drainage. If they impact a water line or any utility, they're responsible, they being in this case, this first project, Vineyard Wind. And then ultimately, they repave the roadways for us. So in the case of the Vineyard Wind project, that's estimated at, it's millions of dollars, $4 million plus probably for that project. So that's a benefit as well. So that project is proceeding, and go to the next project. The Park City Wind project, which is a proposed landing of cable at the west end of Craigville Beach, and then right up Craigville Beach Road, up through Centerville to Chute Flying Hill to a small substation, up off of Chute Flying Hill, and then west over to the Oak Street substation. That's in permitting still. So a lot of people, they've heard news recently about these wind projects not having power purchase agreements. So I've got a lot of calls about the first project. No, that's not what's included in this. Right. The second 2 in different ways are, so Park City Wind is in permitting still. They also are going back to their power purchase agreement and having discussions with the proper agencies, state level agencies, about that power purchase agreement, because the economy has changed significantly. the cost of components have changed significantly, and they're trying to renegotiate their per unit price for power under that agreement. That Park City, as I understand it, I'm not the person to verify this, but we are talking with those agencies to better understand this, allows for that. So they're in permitting and they're revisiting their power purchase agreement. We have a host community agreement for that project. And we have an anticipated start date of next year for
Okay.
that project.
I want to just make sure that you clarify in permitting. That's state and federal permitting. We really, as the town, don't have that right now. They're in the state and federal permitting process.
Correct.
Okay.
I think it's the state permitting
state now,
process
right.
that they're in right now. They will have to come to us for various issues like conservation, for
Sure.
example. But no, the primary agency, as I've observed it, is the Energy Facility Siting Board, who actually has authority to say yes to the project, even if we didn't want the project. So, you know, that's something our residents get very confused about as well. They think that, well, we just say no and that stops it. No,
Right.
no. And I've encouraged our residents to look at federal policy, look at state policy relevant to offshore wind. All you could do is go in and Google it and read what the mandates are from our federal and state government and what the expectations are, and look at the planning from the south coast of Maine down to the Carolinas as to this. Remember, this is the first. The landing at Covels is the first,
Right.
but it is not the only. This is going on up and down the East Coast. And I think it's important for our residents to understand that. Many times people say, well, no, I haven't looked at that.
Right.
So Park City is still in permitting and still negotiating a power purchase agreement. And we do have a host community agreement there. And we expect to see something happen next year, but we'll keep you up to date on that.
Right.
Commonwealth Wind was or is a proposal to land at Dowses Beach, traverse the roads through Osterville, and ultimately tie in again to the Oak Street substation. I would describe them as mid-range permitting. They're in a little bit different scenario relevant to their power purchase agreement, because what you've read a lot about recently is they came out and said, well, we can't fulfill that power purchase agreement. They tried to renegotiate. I don't believe that proceeded. But again, we're not at the table for any of this.
Right.
I don't believe that proceeded. It's what I'm reading primarily and what they share with us when we ask. But again, I don't represent them. I represent the town of Barnstable, so we take that from the source. And so they've said to the state, we would like to get out of that power purchase agreement. And the state said, no, this is too important to us to see these projects proceed. We have a lot more coming. And so, no. But I don't know what that no means. And I don't know what the next action of Commonwealth Wind is relevant to that. The other thing that's going on is, again, they're in about mid-range permitting, environmental project permitting. It is with the state. They are before under the Mass Environmental Protection Act. They're before that. They're before MEPA. They're before that agency for review. They filed an EIR. I'm sorry, an environmental notification form. What this step does is, it's not really a yes or no step. It is what are they going to make them put in the environmental information report, the EIR? That's the next step. And so the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs will, under that person's signature and under comment that they receive, scope out what that environmental impact report will be. Certainly a host of issues there, as there are at all of these. All three certainly areas that are impacted by coastal resiliency. They have various species that could be impacted. They're beaches, they're protected areas to begin with. So all of that is reflected, certainly in the comments that we made on this one. At this point, we don't have a host community agreement in place, and in this case, I've paused that negotiation. The reason I've done it is the other two had, at least during the time of us talking about the host community agreement with them, had the award of the grant area to put up the wind turbines in place from the federal government, had power purchase agreements for it, and were proceeding with environmental project permitting. We'll jump over to Commonwealth Wind now. I don't know what the status of their power purchase agreement is. They had one in place when when I made the recommendation to council, and council provided me authority to begin negotiations of a host community agreement. I'm completely unclear now. So I've asked my legal staff to reach out to the agencies and better understand from them, the agencies, where we are in this process, what might occur next, and until I have those answers, the host community agreement process will be paused, has been paused and will remain paused.
So let's talk a little bit about a host community agreement.
Mm-hmm.
CHAs are between the developer and the town,
Mm-hmm.
and they provide a roadmap, per se, of what the town would like to make sure that these developers are adhering to during their project phases. So there's a host of things in those agreements. Give our residents a sense of, now you're coming into a third host agreement, possibly with Commonwealth. What we've learned from the first host agreement that we made with Vineyard Wind to what we're looking at now for host agreements, and how they benefit the town and the resident. Without these agreements, there's things that could happen that you want to make sure that the town is protected. So I'll give you that kind of lead in. It's a roundabout weighing of how host agreements work and why we are pursuing those as the town.
Well, first of all, they're not required.
Okay.
So this is it's an agreement as a host community, meaning they're asking to land their project. They're asking federal and state to land their project in Barnstable. We're certainly part of that communication, but as I said earlier, we don't necessarily hold the authority to say yes or no. We identify it as an opportunity, given that they can proceed with this even if we oppose this, and successfully achieve approvals to proceed with a project in Barnstable. We go in a discussion with them about, okay, for us not to oppose your project, what are we asking? I told you earlier, one of the big issues early on was no interconnects to that cable by anybody else. Another area is financial. Another area becomes infrastructure replacement.
Okay.
Another area becomes resource protection. And with each progressive host community agreement, we kind of set the base with the first one. All those things were in the first one, but then we begin to add to the host community agreements, especially where the resource where they land, and then the roads that they traverse through. If it's just roads through normal residential, even maybe through a commercial area, okay. But you start going up a Main Street Centerville, or you start proposing Main Street Osterville, those are all very different streetscapes, and merit different agreements relevant to, okay, if you're going to do this, this is what you're going to have to do in the town of Barnstable. This is all above and beyond what the regulators require. This isn't saying, well, we want you to do what, Energy Facility Siting Board or the MEPA process said you had to do. No. Yes, you have to do all that plus more. Took us a long time on the first years to get through the first project. And again, I don't represent them, I represent the community. So we're trying to make sure that if the project proceeds, that it reflects those things that are important to Barnstable. And the process with the town council was, and I've had this asked of me, well, you don't need to have town council approval to go forward with this, but why would I go forward with any long-term agreement in the town of Barnstable that does require the town of Barnstable town council to approve without their involvement in that? I wouldn't go out and negotiate anything long-term and then hand it to them and say, here it is, sign it. That's not the way it works. Step by step, we have to inform and then the proper authorities need to be delegated so that it is no surprise, and nor are they bound to what I negotiate. In the end, the council may not authorize me to sign something. So that's the way we kind of progress through this. I think it's logical. I think it's appropriate. Many people have said to me, especially about the Commonwealth Wind project, why are you doing this? And I say to them, well, think about it this way. If we just said, no, we don't want this project, and we went and said, and we kept saying, no, 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 and they proceed, the further they get toward approval, the less ability I'm going to have to get anything above and beyond what the regulators asked for. Money, environmental protection, asset protection, infrastructure protection. Even money in many ways, host community agreements, support for businesses that are impacted, et cetera, et cetera. Streetscape enhancements, not just repairs, especially when you're in downtowns. If they get all the way to the end and get all their approvals, what do they need us for?
Right.
So, and people will say, well, yeah, but, and I'll say, no, that's what we're faced with here. Right. And I didn't come up with the host community agreement approach. It was there in place, used in other places, but it made sense to put one in place here in Barnstable if they might proceed through a successful implementation. So that's what's occurring. And we're still in the middle of commenting on that environmental impact report, so please don't, when you write to the state, don't just say, I don't want this. Get into the details. Go, if you want to look at what we put in, please, I'll share it with you. But you have major categories that you're going to comment on, and really what you're looking for them to do, them being Commonwealth Wind, is respond to what your concerns are.
Right.
How are you going to do this and not impact natural resources, not impact business community, traverse the roadways in a safe manner, especially where we've got coastal resiliency issues, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So that's what they really need to hear from our residents and us, and
Right.
they did through our comments.
So making the comments succinct to the actual project, not just saying
Yes.
they don't want it.
Yes.
And putting those host agreements in, whether the project actually eventually does get fully permitted, this host agreement protects the town in the interim of this. So, you don't want to do it at the end. From what I hear, you had suggested that getting these host agreements in place before the permitting process is complete gives the town some ability for natural resource protection, infrastructure protection, and those types of assets.
Anything that we can successfully negotiate in, those are just the primary areas that we have included. Yes, because if they have all their permits and they get all the boxes checked, what are they going to give us anything more than what they had to as determined by a federal or a state agency? So I think it's appropriate, and I will continue to recommend to town council. Now, if we go back to what I said, we had those underlying. They had the grant area from the federal government to put up offshore wind turbines. They had a power purchase agreement, and they're going through the regulatory they're going through the regulatory and project permitting process. Well, now, on Commonwealth Wind, this power purchase is in the gray area. So those three underlying aren't there, and therefore, if that had been the case prior to me asking council for authorization, I wouldn't have proceeded with that, because I want to know. I want to know how you're going to finance this. I mean, is this a viable, or are you just speculative, and why would we spend the time on something that's completely speculative? So that's kind of the logic behind why we've paused this at this point on that third project.
Excellent. That was a great update. I learned a lot.
Well, I'll continue to come in and share with people. I certainly do it through other means, like every town manager's report for many years now has included something about a level of interaction. I will also say one more thing.
Sure.
We are still talking with Commonwealth Wind about their environmental project permitting because they're proceeding with it. So when I say I paused, I haven't paused on those discussions. Those are really the regulatory review side of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and the town provides comment for those pieces as well. So it's not like we're just not saying anything. We are questioning some of those natural resources and pieces.
As they relate
Right.
to the regulations, much
Correct.
of what's in the host community agreement goes above that. The state agency isn't, they're going to do what the regulation says because that's what they're tasked
Yep.
with. Okay.
Excellent, fantastic.
All right.
We'll have you back for another update once we've got some new news.
Thank you.